The death of Annalise Michel became one of the most infamous cases involving demonic possession. It marked the first time in history that such a phenomenon was brought into the public eye and taken to court for trial. The case sparked a controversy that continues to this day, an endless debate between believers in the supernatural and skeptics. In 2005, Hollywood released the chilling film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was entirely based on Annalise Michel's case. Yet many claim that even this haunting movie failed to fully capture the true horror of what happened in real life. This case, at its core, is truly a tragedy, the heartbreaking story of a young and innocent girl. While her death has stirred immense controversy, it also carries deep significance. In this video, let's walk together through the chilling yet profound case of Annalise Michel. We'll explore not only the terrifying demonic elements, but also the most grounded scientific explanations behind what happened. Our goal isn't to prove who was right or wrong, but to uncover a multidimensional understanding of the case. And from that broader perspective, we may find the most valuable lessons that Annalise Michel may have paid for with her very life. The video will feature unsettling and eerie sounds that may cause discomfort. If you are sensitive to spiritual or paranormal themes, please know your own limits and consider carefully before watching. The story takes place in Germany, not long after the end of World War II. On September 21, 1952, Annalise Michel was born into a family with several sisters. Her family and the community where she was raised were deeply devoted to the Catholic faith. As a result, Annalise grew up with a strong belief in God rooted in her heart. Anna Michel, Annalise's mother, had given birth to a child out of wedlock before Annalise was born. Naturally, this brought her immense shame and condemnation from the devout religious community of the time. She was discriminated against to the extent that, on her wedding day, she was not allowed to wear a traditional white dress like other brides. Instead, she was forced to wear a black wedding gown, a symbol of disgrace. Tragically, her out-of-wedlock daughter died at the age of 8 after undergoing surgery for tumors. This only deepened Anna's overwhelming sense of guilt. Because of her own shame and guilt, Anna Michel raised her youngest daughter, Annalise, to be a devout follower of God dedicated entirely to serving the Lord. As if to atone for the sins of the past, this mindset began shaping Annalise from a very young age. She was gentle, obedient, and exceptionally pious, influenced both by her religious upbringing and the environment she was raised in. Anna instilled in her the belief that her life's purpose was to make up for the wrongdoings of others. Many psychologists later suggested that Annalise developed an obsessive fixation on living a morally righteous life to redeem the sins of those around her. Records even note that she often chose to sleep on the floor as an act of solidarity with the homeless who had no beds and were left to sleep on the cold streets. The tragedy began in 1968, when Annalise was just 16 years old. While at school, she suddenly experienced a blackout, followed by violent convulsions that caused her to lose control of her body. That same evening, after returning home, she felt completely paralyzed, struggled to breathe, and described the terrifying sensation of something or someone sitting on top of her. She was unable to control her body and even urinated involuntarily. A year later, Annalise suffered another episode, this time even more severe. She described the experience as if something had taken over her body. What was even more disturbing, she began seeing demonic faces, a chilling development that would mark the beginning of a much darker journey. At this point, Annalise's family took her to see a doctor. The physicians diagnosed her symptoms as epilepsy and prescribed her medication to control the seizures. However, by 1970, a year later, her condition had worsened, prompting her transfer to a specialized care facility for more intensive treatment. The details of her stay remain unclear, but after a relatively short time, Annalise was discharged from the facility. In addition to her epilepsy medication, she was also prescribed antipsychotic drugs, typically used to treat schizophrenia. This marked a shift in her treatment. as doctors began to suspect that her condition might involve deeper psychological issues beyond just epilepsy. Later on, Anneliese continued her studies and went on to university. She lived her daily life while also fighting against the strange illness. However, her condition continued to worsen despite taking medication. Anneliese began to exhibit more severe symptoms such as violence, throwing objects, growling, screaming, and even drinking her own urine. She also said that she had seen demons telling her to die or cursing her, saying, "You will burn in hell." At this point, Anneliese's family began to lose faith in the doctors. They believed their daughter was possessed by demons and contacted priests in hopes of performing an exorcism for her. However, at that time, the priests refused. They advised the family to continue medical treatment as instructed by the doctors. Combined with prayer, perhaps things would improve. In 1975, the young woman's condition became worse than ever. The hallucinations occurred continuously and became more intense. She began to show strange symptoms when exposed to anything related to Christianity. She didn't dare to enter church grounds, was afraid to look at images of God, and feared objects like crucifixes, rosaries, and holy water. Physically, her condition also worsened. She suffered from convulsions and twisted her body, causing injuries all over herself. She stopped eating and even consumed insects and drank her own urine. What was terrifying was that Anneliese began to speak in different voices and tones, sometimes using strange languages. At this point, Anneliese's family and Anneliese herself made the decision to stop all medical treatments and once again turn to the priests for an exorcism. The symptoms she exhibited were recognized by the priests as meeting the conditions required to perform an exorcism. In September 1975, the bishop finally granted permission for Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt to carry out the rite of exorcism on Anneliese. Over the next 10 months, Anneliese underwent many exorcism sessions, held once or twice a week, each lasting up to 4 hours. All of the sessions were recorded, but painfully, the results of these exorcisms did not turn out as hoped. On July 1, 1976, Anneliese Michel took her last breath at the age of 23. At the time of her death, her physical condition was extremely poor. She had severe pneumonia, serious injuries to her knees, bruises on her wrists, hands, eyes, and many other parts of her body. The autopsy report indicated that the main cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. She died from not eating or drinking. A trial over the death of Anneliese was held by local authorities, aiming to prosecute her parents and the 2 priests who performed the exorcism. This was the first trial in history where demonic possession was brought before it as a defense. The lawyers played horrifying audio recordings of the exorcism sessions to prove to the court that demons were real. And if possession was real, then Anneliese's parents and the 2 priests were not guilty. Many people present at the trial were convinced by the disturbing details in the tapes. However, all 4 defendants were still found guilty of negligent manslaughter and were sentenced to 6 months in prison. But later, for some reason, the sentence was reduced to 3 years of probation, meaning they did not have to serve prison time but were placed under supervision for 3 years. Clearly, the court was never able to definitively determine whether these individuals were guilty or not. That's why this trial remains one of the most controversial to this very day. This is the voice of Anneliese when she was in a clear and conscious state. And here is the voice of Anneliese during the exorcism. This might simply be the sound of a very ill person, but it could also very well be the true voice of a demon. Please listen with caution if you are easily affected. Over 100 hours of audio recordings were presented as evidence in court. During the exorcism sessions, there were times when Anneliese claimed that 6 demons were possessing her body: Judas, Hitler, Lucifer, Fleischmann, Nero, and Cain. Whenever a particular demon took control, Anneliese would speak in the language and tone of that specific entity. Judas spoke in Greek. Lucifer, also known as Santa, spoke in English and Aramaic. Nero spoke in Latin. Cain spoke in Hebrew. It can be heard in the recordings that Annalise spoke in those different languages during the exorcism sessions, due to the horrifying content and the sounds that were believed to be impossible for any human to produce. Many people came to believe that demons were real and that Annalise was truly possessed. Let's take a look from the spiritual perspective of those involved. From the family side, we know that Annalise tried very hard to treat her illness with modern medicine, but as the years went by, her condition only worsened. She was hospitalized, took epilepsy medication, and even antipsychotic drugs, but none of them worked. Her family was also deeply religious. It's easy to understand why Annalise and her family believed she was possessed by demons. From the church's side, the priests had initially refused and advised the family to pursue medical treatment. But when things became truly dire, they decided to step in, hoping to save the poor girl after listening to the audio recordings. I feel that the two priests must have been incredibly brave and compassionate toward Annalise to remain there, calm and composed, facing everything. Their biggest mistake, however, was failing to accurately assess her actual physical condition, a misjudgment that indirectly led to her death from malnutrition and dehydration. Regarding the meaning of her death, many people believe that Annalise Michel's passing meant that the demons had won, but when viewed through the lens of Christian theology, that's not entirely accurate. One of the pieces of evidence presented in court was a letter Annalise had written before her death. In that letter, she shared that a messenger sent by God had appeared to her and revealed his will. God gave her two choices. First, he could free her immediately from the demons. Or second, she could remain in her current suffering, but through it, many souls would come to know God and be saved from eternal damnation. Annalise chose to stay. At the moment of her death, Annalise was finally freed and able to rest in peace. The letter she left behind helps us understand her intentions. She was willing to endure pain and even death for her beliefs, with the hope that through her sacrifice, more souls would come to know God and be saved. In many ways, she achieved exactly what she had hoped for. The trial brought global attention to the existence of demons and the Christian faith. As a result, many people came to believe in both the existence of evil and in God. Not only that, but because of her death, the Catholic Church did something unprecedented. For the first time, they revised a law that had remained unchanged since the 17th century. They added a new regulation stating that any priest performing an exorcism must undergo medical training. From then on, every exorcism would need to be conducted in conjunction with modern medical care in order to protect the life of the possessed person. This change will undoubtedly save many lives in the future, and it happened because of Annalise Michel. Her grave continues to be visited by many people every year. Her story and her sacrifice have become a source of spiritual strength for Catholics all around the world. Let's now explore the modern medical perspective on this case. In fact, all of Annalise's bizarre symptoms closely match those of epilepsy and schizophrenia. Doctors believe that the poor girl was heavily influenced by religious ideas from a young age, mainly due to her mother and the environment in which she was raised. As a result, when she began experiencing epileptic episodes, she interpreted them as supernatural events. Over time, these beliefs deeply affected her psyche, eventually contributing to the development of schizophrenia. Doctors believe that with further medical intervention and an increased dosage of her medication, Annalise might not have died. The horrifying tone of her voice during the exorcisms could be explained by her severe pneumonia, which may have altered her vocal cords. Perhaps the most chilling part of the case was her ability to speak in strange languages. However, after doing some research, I found something interesting. One of her university professors noted that Annalise had a natural talent for learning languages from a young age. She had also spent a great deal of time studying religious texts. It's possible that, thanks to this talent, she had taught herself the languages found in those texts. This may be the only scientific explanation for why she could speak multiple tongues during the exorcisms in the trial of Annelise's parents and the two priests. The main argument that led to their conviction for manslaughter was this: if Annelise had received proper medical support, she would not have died from malnutrition and dehydration. Medical care at the time was fully capable of keeping her alive. Even if she refused to eat or drink, this fact is undeniable and cannot be disputed. So now we've taken a clear look at both sides of the case. Was it demonic possession, mental illness, or perhaps even both? Surely, each of you has drawn your own conclusions. The trial, while delivering a guilty verdict, ultimately reduced the sentence from 6 months in prison to 3 years of probation. On the other side, the Catholic Church, for the first time since the 17th century, amended its laws, adding essential medical requirements to the practice of exorcism. In this case, both perspectives, spiritual and medical, seem to show a degree of mutual respect and restraint. So I also hope there won't be any negative comments toward the Catholic faith in the comment section below. I personally feel that many of the sources covering this case are quite one-sided. Most of them focus solely on blaming Annelise's parents and the two priests, accusing them of being overly superstitious and responsible for her death. But that feels a little unfair. The two priests must have been incredibly brave and compassionate to come forward and try to help Annelise, especially after medical treatment had failed her. Their fault wasn't malice, but rather a lack of medical knowledge. If only, at that time, they had been able to combine both exorcism and proper medical care, maybe things could have ended differently. Personally, in this case, I lean more toward the scientific and medical explanation. Mental illnesses deserve much more attention and understanding. They need to be properly recognized and treated. If not, they can become extremely dangerous, just like what happened in this tragic case. Looking back, this is truly a tragedy for the young girl Annelise, a girl who chose to give everything as the purpose of her life, a girl with a pure and innocent soul. If there really is a soul after death, surely she would be proud that her sacrifice has helped so many others.